when we think of England, it does seem inconceivable to us that it might not have survived.
That's
I mean,
right.
it really does seem almost impossible to comprehend that
Yes.
possibility.
But for them, living in real time and not knowing the outcome, there's a series of letters that Lewis wrote to a couple of his friends. Dom Griffiths was one of them, where it's 1938, and it's in October of 1938. And he says, pray for me, because I was terrified to discover how terrified I was by the crisis. Now, you know, what's the crisis? In September, October of 1938, it's the Munich crisis. They're living through the Munich crisis. And the sense that Britain is on the edge of another world war, there's a sense of dread and gloom in the air. And Lewis he's terrified by the prospect of another war. He says he'd rather die than go through another war, but here he is.
Well, this is the other thing, too, about history and the way we perceive time.
Yeah.
I mean, you and I are pretty much contemporaries, and so for us, World War II is ancient history. World War I is 1,000 years before World War II.
Right.
To them,
Right.
it was 10 minutes ago.
Right.
That is tough to fathom, that the distance between 1918
Yes.
and 1938 is less than nothing.
Yes.
I mean, as we sit here, that's 2005.
Exactly.
So it was just a moment ago
That's right.
that they had crawled out of that abyss.
Yes.
And here they are.
Yes, their lives are bracketed by two global conflicts, the most destructive wars in the history of humanity. Their lives are bracketed by those wars. And we cannot appreciate their literary achievements unless we understand that basic fact about their lives, right? But I don't see many authors or others really understanding that and pressing that and helping us to understand it, and what an achievement it was for them to accomplish what they did in their writings in that absolute cataclysmic period from 1939 to 1945. Think about it, Eric. The Blitz on London, 76 consecutive nights of aerial bombing on the city of London, save one night. 76 consecutive nights. They're in Oxford. And so friends, family members, the evacuation of children by the thousands into Oxford. How does Lewis get the idea for The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe? The evacuation of children from London because of the war to the home of a professor. That's when he first starts writing those lines during the Second World War, the opening lines to the line. So they are in the midst of the struggle. And I think for Americans, you know, we're on the other side of the Atlantic, right? We don't get involved until Pearl Harbor. And there are some British historians who think we may not even have gotten involved had we not been attacked by Japan. We were so isolationist.
I'm pretty sure that's a fact.
Wow, you do?
At least I would. If I had to guess, yes, I would say that.
Yeah.
Well, just for me and for those listening and watching, give us the chronology. In other words, when did Lewis, or what was Lewis writing during this period, and what about Tolkien? When did Tolkien start The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings? When did that process begin?
Yeah, let's take the second one first.
Yeah.
Tolkien writes The Hobbit in around 1933. He's got the draft of The Hobbit out. It doesn't get published till 1937. And of course, you know this because you've written some successful books. Your publisher is always demanding more. Give me a sequel. His publisher wants a sequel to The Hobbit. And he initially says, I have nothing more to say about hobbits. He literally tells him that. Nothing more to say about hobbits. But he starts writing it again when? At the end of 1937. So from the end of 1937 right through the Second World War, he is struggling with that manuscript. And we can talk more about how the war, I think, affected his imagination throughout. Well, Lewis, think about the Screwtape letters, for example. This diabolical fantasy, right? Screwtape, the demon and a junior demon. How do we tempt and drag a human being, a human soul, into the pit of hell, right? How does he get the idea for the Screwtape letters? I think you know this. It's 1940 in the fall, and Hitler now controls virtually all of Central and Western Europe. France has fallen. No sign of America entering the war. Hitler has just given a speech, I think, on a Friday. He's triumphant. The German people will follow him anywhere. And the speech, Lewis is listening to it. It's being broadcast by the BBC and simultaneously translated into English. He's with his friend, Dr. Havard, the family physician. They're listening to the speech on a Friday, Hitler's speech. It's all about, of course, conquest and his rage, his hatreds. Lewis says, actually in a letter to his brother, Warney, he says, while the speech lasts, it's almost impossible not to waver just a little.
Wow.
Think about that. the power of the charisma of that individual. But then he says,
Yeah.
in church on Sunday, he gets the idea for the Screwtape letters. Not an accident, in my mind. Wow. Not an accident. A diabolical fantasy. But he's going to focus on not a global conflict,
Yeah.
but the spiritual conflict
Yeah.
going on for the soul of every human being. Now,
Yeah.
that's a deeply committed Christian author. Wow. Remarkable man. But it's the speech.
Yeah.
It's the speech. It's Hitler's speech.
I absolutely never heard that. That's extraordinary. And so when does, let's go back, actually. You mentioned the friendship.
Yeah.
I'm sure we've covered this at some point in one of our previous conversations. But, 1926, Tolkien is a Catholic Christian.
Yes.
C.S. Lewis is an atheist.
He's an atheist, yep.
Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah.
Their friendship.
Yeah.
They both obviously have the war in common. How did they become friends,
Yeah.
or what began to draw them together before Lewis comes to faith?
It's a great question. One little thing that Tolkien did, he's a linguist, he's a philologist. He loves languages.
Yeah, yeah.
All kinds of different languages.
Yeah.
Icelandic was one of the languages that he knew
Right.
and loved
Yeah.
because of these epic sagas that were written in the original Icelandic. So he starts a little Icelandic group, a reading group that only Tolkien would do, and he asked Lewis to join him. And I think that was the beginning of the friendship.
Yeah.
Because Lewis also was stirred by the same kind of sagas. And you get the sense that they're having something is happening here in the friendship. One of the turning points, though, is when Tolkien sends to Lewis his early manuscript of the story of Beren and Luthien. The human and the princess. Go.
Wait, who sends the story?
Tolkien sends it to Lewis.
Yes, I was going to say.
It's
okay.
an early. Did I say Tolkien
No,
sends it to Lewis.
I wasn't clear. So yeah.
So the elvish princess who lives eternally and the love relationship with the mortal man, he sends it to Lewis for his feedback. Lewis sends him like 12 pages of critique, and in the letter that he sends to Tolkien, he says more quibbles to follow. 12 pages of critique, but he loves it. He loves the story. And he's helping to see how it could be better. Tolkien incorporates some of Lewis's suggested edits. But think about what would happen if you had sent me an early part of your manuscript and said, I got time for that, Eric. I have time to read your manuscript, critique it. You'd interpret that in a certain way, right? He responds with this thoughtful critique, and you can tell that is a turning point. Because what's Tolkien doing? He said that story was closest to his own life. His relationship with his own wife. It's kind of modeled on that. Mm-hmm. So it's a precious story to him, one of his most favorite stories of all the legendarium. He's sharing it with his friend Lewis. It's a turning point in the relationship. He realized there's a kindred spirit.
Well, now when you say it's one of the first, he invented the story.
Yes, Tolkien did, of course. Yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to comment on the idea of, think of a world in which people are writing stories.
Yes.
We don't live in a world where people are writing stories. It's an interesting thing to me that there existed a market or a world in which one could write a story like that. Presumably, there's an audience for that.
He's reinventing fantasy for the modern mind, is what he's doing. He's writing he's writing really the first modern fantasy story, and he's showing future writers how you do it. And one of the ways you do it is you build it upon a whole history. A deep, rich, ancient history, so it has depth, has realism.
We're so familiar with that we're over familiar with it to the point where I realized that I'd never particularly liked reading fantasy, and I think because most of it is not that good because it's sort of trying to do what Tolkien did, but without his amazing talent.
Yes.
So he kind of invented the genre.
He really did invent the genre.
I don't know that I've invented any genres. Have you ever invented a genre?
Not lately.
It's an amazing thing.
How do you invent the genre?
Where does that come from?
Well, we have to say this, and I think your audience will appreciate this. Without their education, with their classical Christian education, think about it. Homer, Virgil, Dante, Milton, this is part of their intellectual furniture.
Yeah, there you
go. And you don't write fantasy with depth without that as part of your moral literary outlook. That's part of the reason I think we don't produce.
Actually, no, that's
right?
interesting. So to some extent, I mean, they're standing on the shoulders of, Dante and
Yes.
Milton
Beowulf.
and Homer
Yes.
and whoever wrote Beowulf.
Yes.
We'll never know
I think you wrote Beowulf.
unless I think it was Mark Felt. He was he was the head of the FBI in the late '60s, I believe.
A little side hustle.
I believe his name was Mark Felt.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll look that up on Wikipedia.
So no, but it's just so interesting because when we think of those literary epics,
Yeah.
that really is.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
we say he invented a genre, but
Yes.
but he really was coming out of that.
And think about this, back to the friendship, and it ties in the genre business as well. Beowulf was probably the most important literary work in Tolkien's life. He translated it.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He taught on it for decades. It was a huge part of his academic and literary life. And
Yeah.
it's a story of this hero who's up against Grendel it's one monster after another. Raw evil, radical evil is what Beowulf is up against. Tolkien is drawn to stories of that lone heroic quest, putting aside your own ambition, following your moral duty to save others against a radical evil. Lewis is drawn to the same thing.
You reference, The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, Screwtape Letters, The Abolition of Man,
Yes.
Lewis's Space Trilogy,
Yes.
The Narnia Chronicles. It really is interesting because there is something, particularly in the Space Trilogy,
Yeah.
horrific,
Yeah.
frightening.
The Unman.
The Abolition of Man is similar to that.
Yes.
His short book, The Abolition of Man.
Yes.
There's no other word for it. It's evil.
Yes.
They really, really, truly see
Yes.
the evilness of
Yes.
evil in a
Yes.
way that most,
Yes.
I would say almost no writers in the 20th century do the way they do.
Yeah, maybe Orwell, maybe George Orwell, perhaps.
Yeah.
Perhaps. But again, think about the political, cultural context. Lewis is writing the Space Trilogy, begins writing it 1938, 1939, 1940. You know what is happening. The rise of the totalitarian states, communism, Nazism, and they are ravaging the European continent, right? So what do we get, if I could read a few lines?
Yeah.
Talking about radical evil from Paralandra now,
Yeah.
right? The second in the series.
Yeah.
And the description of the unman is really, it's horrifying.
Paralandra is, if somebody put a gun to my head at 2 a.m. and said, what's your favorite book? I might have to spit out Paralandra. I mean, that book is, I don't know anything that really can compare to it in the 20th century,
Yes.
but go ahead.
The temptation of the Eve character by this demonic character, the unman. There's nothing like it in modern literature. You feel like you're in the Garden of Eden, listening to the temptation, don't you?
Yeah.
Here's a few lines. The description that Lewis gives of the unman. Tell me what comes to mind, Eric. It did not defy goodness, it ignored it to the point of annihilation. Ransom perceived that he had never before seen anything but half-hearted and uneasy attempts at evil. This creature was wholehearted.
Pops right into my head, Michael Dukakis. Oh my
Well, in
gosh!
the tank shot, right, with the helmet
No,
on the tank on the campaign. You remember the campaign, right?
So it is funny though because when you think about it, we really don't. That is one of the reasons that book convinced me of the unprecedented genius of C.S. Lewis to create that picture of evil that you just read.
Yes.
It is chilling.
It's chilling, but it's not just out of his imagination, right? It's at his doorstep. It's at the doorstep of England in 1940-41. They're expecting an invasion by the Nazis any day, and they're trying to prepare for it, right? So there's a form of radical evil on the political stage, and this is how we, again, help to appreciate their literary achievement. Right?
Well, he's still, what's fascinating to me is the prophetic quality of Lewis, that in The Abolition of Man, and in the last book in the so-called, in the Ransom Trilogy, he's talking about things, it seems, very contemporary. Like he sees where it's all going.
Yes.
Before I think anyone does.
Yeah, I think that's right. The hideous strength, and the way that science and technology will be used and abused in the service of what? The will to power. Well, welcome to our age, friend, the 21st century. Science and technology to dehumanize us, holding out the promise of the good life, of the perfect life. Here we are, right?
Unfortunately, I'm tracking. It's
He was
extraordinary.
prophetic.
If you think these conversations are valuable, would you do us a favor and please like this video and subscribe to this channel? When you do that, you help us get these conversations out to a wider audience by telling YouTube that people are interested in this. Also, you can go to SocratesInTheCity.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you can check back every week. There's new stuff here every week. Thank you for tuning in.